Man, oh man, guys, we have a special video once again today, and it's really special because we gotta, show respect to Etika, man. Shout out to him. May he rest in peace. I don't want to bring it down, but best quote ever, and it's some variation like this. I don't really remember what it was, but don't frown because it's over, smile because it happened, and that's the kind of vibe we gotta bring out, man. But today we're gonna talk about one of his favorite companies and one of my favorite console genres ever, and that is the Nintendo 2DS XL. We're gonna see how it holds up in 2019. Is it still worth it? Is it not? Is there any alternatives? And I finally got one, bro. I finally got one like a week ago, and I reviewed pretty much every single other portable Nintendo console. I think I've owned almost every single one except like the very first one, the Game & Watch, and maybe like a couple other ones in between, but I've owned almost every single one and I've reviewed every single one, and I think Nintendo consoles are awesome. I have so much history with them. I think I got my first Nintendo DS Lite when I was like 10 or something, and I love them so much. I still have that same one too. And to kind of sum up a little bit of summary of the 2DS XL, man, the 2DS XL came out in 2017 and is turning 2 years old this year. And actually, I think it's almost 2 years old this month, actually, which is kind of surprising. Or it might be next month or whatever. But this was actually the successor to the original Nintendo 2DS, which, if you guys remember when that thing came out, that was pretty much at the time like perceived to be like a joke of some sort. People were thinking like, oh, this was like so funny, this and that, because it just seemed like a really generic thing. It just seemed like, why would Nintendo to do this? Like, it made no sense. But then they eventually released it, and it was just a cheaper version of the 3DS. And I think it definitely was, an interesting concept. Like, I think it maybe was needed, but I think the way they just rushed it to the market just seemed a little bit weird. I think they could have done so much better. And I think the 2DS XL is a much better and a huge improvement from the 2DS, the original one. And looking around the body, you can see that we do have the clamshell design. It's just like the 3DS, the DS Lite, the DSi, all those ones. And when closed, you actually have this like rubber texture on top, which I kind of like. It reminds me of like the Nerf cases that used to be released with like the DS Lite, if you guys remember those, if you're OGs. It's still pretty thick too, but it's not a huge deal. It's thick with 2 C's, by the way. And opening it up, honestly, I love this design. I honestly think I prefer this design over the 3DS and 3DS XL, to be honest. Now, you have a 4.8-inch LCD on top and a 4.1-inch LCD on the bottom. And even though they're not the sharpest, a lot of people complain about it, whatever. I like the design. I think it's definitely needed. I think it's a cool thing overall. It is a little bit glossy for the top screen. The bottom screen, it doesn't really matter because you're not really ever going to use it that much. But overall, even though the screens are whatever, I like them. Again, you're not paying for like the best premium quality thing. If you want that, you can go for the 3DS XL. You're just kind of getting this for the experience on a budget almost. So I think a lot of people have developed that and kind of understood that at this point, but at the time of its release, that's a big thing people were complaining about. Now, you still have 2 cameras on the back and 1 front-facing camera, even though people probably complained about it at that time too. I don't think anybody is going to use them anymore. I don't think anybody's using PictoChat in 2019, but I might make an update review. Hit that like button if you guys want to see a PictoChat in 2019. Is it still worth it, or comparison or whatever? I don't know. I'll try to do one of those and kind of see if there's been an improvement or whatever, if there's anyone still on it. The cool thing is the 2DS XL actually still maintains that game slot. They didn't switch it up on us or make it proprietary or anything like that. You could still use 3DS games and even DS Lite, DSi, whatever. Most games that are supported on those ones will work on the 2DS XL, which is awesome. They didn't pull a Sony with the PSP Go and made everything digital and all that. So in terms of that, you will be set. And like I said, man, the overall body, yes, the 3DS and 3DS XL, were definitely good looking consoles too. And maybe they were better built, but there's just something about the 2DS XL. I think maybe it was the bigger screens or the less bezel around the top screen or something. I'm not even too sure. But I think this one was on a whole other level. Yes, it probably wasn't the best build at the time, but I think it's definitely cool, and I really like the way it looks, even now, 2 years later. Now, the main thing in terms of hardware that differentiated the 3DS and 2DS were really the cheaper parts, kind of, but mostly it was the 3D screen functionality. So, as you know, the 3DS, the name kind of implies that it had that 3D toggle where you can stare at the top screen and it'll actually be like a 3D thing and 3D effect. So you didn't even have to have 3D goggles or anything. You could just look at it and it will be 3D kind of. Now, that seems like a cool thing, but I'm telling you right now, even when that thing was released, when I picked up my first 3DS, I was like, that's cool, but I used it maybe like twice. So the 3D functionality is not a big deal to me, and that kind of sucks up battery too, so it's just kind of an unnecessary thing. And looking back at that whole 3DS, the 3D toggle and everything, I think it was probably one of the biggest gimmicks ever. I don't think I've ever met anybody who like bragged about that. I think maybe when it was first released, people were like bragging about it and flexing on everybody about it, but I own both the 3DS and the 3DS XL, and I think I've only used the 3D function like twice maybe in order to see if I liked it. But honestly, like I heard a lot of people saying this and I finally got to experience it. Like my eyes did hurt after a while after I was gaming with it. Like you become kind of cross-eyed and you kind of start seeing things. Like I started seeing ghosts and stuff. I'm like, what the heck is going on? No, I'm just kidding, but it's just kind of a weird thing. It just seems like a necessary gimmick. So in terms of that, even 2 years later, it's not even that big of a deal at all. And if that's one thing that's deterring you, it really should not at all, to be honest. Now, in terms of the way it feels in 2019, like I said, I think it still feels fine. Does it feel as premium as a Nintendo Switch or something? Honestly, I don't even think the Nintendo Switch feels that premium. I think they could definitely do better on the next version of the Switch. I like it though. But no, it doesn't feel as good as that, but it doesn't feel extremely cheap like my original 2DS felt either. In terms of the hardware itself, that was a pretty big jump from the 2DS to the 2DS XL, a much bigger jump from like the 3DS to like the new 3DS or like whatever have you in my opinion. Now, since its release, we've seen some interesting developments. We've seen a couple software updates here and there, and maybe we've seen some cool games here and there as well, but one of the biggest developments was probably the Nintendo Switch, which is funny because it came out before this thing was even released, but the Switch really overshadowed what this thing could have been, should have been, whatever. And the reason is because everyone's pretty much focused on the Switch, everyone's talking about that, and because there's a huge spotlight on the Nintendo Switch, the 2DS and even the Nintendo 3DS line kind of went away. I mean, yes, it's still there. I think Nintendo's still selling them and you can still get them everywhere, even on Best Buy, but more people are focused on the Switch, which isn't a bad thing at all. I'm not even saying that I love my Nintendo Switch, I like it to death. The fire is still there for the 3DS and 2DS, people still love these things, but the attention is on the Switch, and because of that, developers are spending more time creating for that console since it's the better one. But with that being said, the 2DS XL is still amazing. You have all the 3DS games you can play, but you also have all the DS Lite games, that includes DSi, DS Lite, whatever. All those games and all those amazing titles are able to be played on the 2DS XL, so it makes the lifespan of the 2DS XL that much better. That's something the Nintendo Switch does not have. It doesn't have a 3DS or DS slot, so you can't necessarily play those games on the Switch from a cartridge. So you still have all those amazing games you can play on the 2DS XL, which is an amazing thing about it. Now you're also able to put custom firmware on your 2DS XL and do whatever you want with it. So that's definitely something that you should look into if you're into that kind of stuff. Now moving on to the battery life, I think it's also been one of the biggest points of the 2DS XL and one of the highlights. Even though mine was used and even though it's a couple years old at this point, it can still hold its battery life quite well. I think it might be a little bit better than my 3DS XL, but I haven't quite compared them yet, so I don't know which one is 100% better. But off first inference, I would only assume that the 3DS XL might not be able to compare to the 2DS XL, which is pretty interesting. Now, ultimately, to answer the question, is the Nintendo 2DS XL still worth it in 2019? You might have already expected this. Yes, I think it is 100% worth it. I still think the DS Lite is still worth it, but it is kind of costly here and there. It has so many game titles you can play. There's homebrew, custom firmware, and just overall so much gaming value you can have just by owning something even from the 2DS line. You don't have to get a 3DS or 3DS XL. Honestly, you're not really missing out on anything at all. And I still think it's a very good pickup in 2019. But really the only con I can think of is like the price tag, which also kind of deters me away from recommending it to people because the 2DS is so much cheaper, and I don't think a lot of people really understand what they're giving up. Like the 2DS XL is an amazing console and I like it a lot, but the thing it's supposed to be cheaper than is actually more expensive than in the used market. Like you can get a 3DS XL, a used one, cheaper than a 2DS XL. Like for example, for me, I bought my 3DS XL for like $50 on eBay. I paid like $70 for my 2DS XL, which is kind of weird. Like, isn't the 2DS XL supposed to be cheaper? That's not necessarily the case because the 2DS XL is so much newer, but when you're walking into Best Buy and you're buying these things new, on the aisle you can see that 3DS is more expensive than the 2DS XL. So kind of interesting thing. I mean, do whatever, but I would definitely tell you, if you're able to spend a little bit more money, I would probably buy just a Nintendo Switch. You can even buy a used one, whatever. I think that might be the better console to get. You'll be getting future support since game developers are all pretty much creating for the Nintendo Switch. Yes, there's people probably still making 2DS games and 3DS games, whatever. I just think there's more people who are, developing for the Nintendo Switch, and that's definitely the future, being able to download games from the eShop. Yes, there's an eShop for 3DS and 2DS, but I don't think it's comparable to the Switches, and even the Switches isn't even that good. It can definitely be improved, but Nintendo's definitely making strides in that sense, and the Switch is just on another level from the 2DS XL, and you'll be able to play higher graphical games as well. So I'll definitely tell you, yes, the 2DS XL is better, but if you can spend a little bit more money, just go buy a Nintendo Switch. Buy a 2DS XL later once you save up a little bit of money, but I think the Switch is the better console, as you probably expected. But those are kind of my opinions. If you want to pick up a Nintendo 2DS XL or a Nintendo Switch, I'll find the cheapest ones on Amazon and I'll link it straight in the description below. It'll be the first and second links down there. So it means so much if you guys could check those out and actually purchase things to help support the channel. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I would really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.